Hello, guys. This is Kayla.
And this is Leah.
In the editing bay, a.k.a. my eating kitchen, with a blanket over two doors. And,
and all the critters.
All of the critters. We wanted to stop in before the episode started and wish all of you a happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Love Day.
If you do not have a Valentine, we will be your Valentine.
We absolutely will. And you can send us chocolates, sparkly things,
all
5-star
things.
Reviews,
Tequila,
flowers,
vodka,
vodka,
anything
Chardonnay.
that you would like. But we just wanted to drop in really quick and tell all of you happy Valentine's Day. We hope that your Valentine's Day is fantastic. You do not need to have a Valentine.
Nope.
Because you can be your own Valentine.
That's right, because you are a pink starburst.
Go treat yourself today.
That's right.
If you've ever seen Parks and Rec, treat yourself.
That's right.
And we love you guys.
Very much.
So we're going to go ahead and get into the show.
Enjoy.
You are listening to One Nation Under Crime, a historical, chronological true crime podcast. Each week, we go through our nation's history and discuss one case from each year, starting in 1800. I'm Kayla.
And I'm Leah.
We've made it to another milestone.
Woo-hoo.
We made it to 2 milestones this week, actually.
Wow.
So we're to episode 40.
Woohoo!
40 episodes.
Almost as old as me.
Almost, but not quite.
That's exciting.
So 40 episodes is what we have officially made it to.
That's fantabulous.
I mean, 40 over. So at this point, over 40 hours, an entire work week, y'all have listened to us. And trust me.
And we thank you.
Some of those episodes were a lot longer.
Yes, yes, they were.
Probably 50 hours total.
We had a lot to
did
say.
overtime. You did overtime.
Yes, you did. And we appreciate it.
And if you tell your friends, family, dentist, dental assistant, stranger on the street,
people in the waiting room while waiting on the dentist,
your neighbor in traffic about our podcast, then they too can listen to us for 50 straight hours.
Absolutely.
I think like our Spotify end of the year thing came up last year, and it says how many minutes of record, like how many minutes of whatever you put out.
Mm-hmm.
And we had like 1,500 minutes, and I went, oh gosh, that's a really big number. Oh no, there's that much out there. Ooh.
That's so fun though.
But the other milestone that we have achieved this week.
What is that?
We've hit 6,000 downloads.
Yes, that was such an exciting text I got.
I was excited. I cannot believe it.
It's very exciting.
Guys, like, I don't think y'all realize what a big deal that is. And so
really
for
is.
some people who do not have, you know, like our side, well, my side of like the statistics and like all of that stuff, guys, like most podcasts would, like, they don't even make it to episode 20. Like they stop making a podcast.
Really?
And then, yeah, they don't even make it to episode 20.
I don't know this stuff either.
And then there's only a certain percentage that make it to like over 5,000 downloads.
Really?
Yes. And so we have not only like reached 6,000 downloads, which, guys, that's so crazy.
It's really cool.
We have 6,000 downloads now. We're over that at this point. We have been listened to in 35 countries.
Wow.
How 35. All but Antarctica.
Wow.
So somebody moved to Antarctica and download our podcast.
Please, that would be so
that would be so great. We have listeners in New Zealand. We have listeners in Australia. We have listeners in Japan, in South Africa, in the Sudan. Like, we have some listeners, and guys, don't think that I don't see you, because we have some listeners that are in the UK that I see every week download our podcast. So hello, introduce yourselves. I know you're listening because I see the download. So introduce yourself.
Yeah, Kayla sees all the stuff.
We have a listener in Germany that is a very like also with our other UK listener, we have one that's in London that listens constantly. We have one in Germany that does. We have several in Canada, like
Scotland.
We have Scotland. We have which like Scotland's obvious. Nessie is a fan of the podcast. It's no big deal. We're friends.
Duh.
We're friends. Nessie downloads every week. We know Nessie is a she. She gives me feedback. It's a whole thing. And guys, like this is episode 40. So this is a big number for us.
Big deal.
We're creeping up to the even bigger number, and I can't even think that far ahead because that's a lot of research that I have to do.
Deep breath.
Till we get to that point.
Deep breath.
It's fine. But like we've almost been doing this a year.
I know. What are we going to do for a celebration?
I don't know.
We need to dress up in a fancy dress.
So and that's why we drink. One of the anniversaries that they had, they just honestly, and that's why we drink. Christine Schieffer and M. Schultz celebrated their 5-year anniversary. So congratulations. I don't know if y'all will ever listen to this, but I love you guys, Christine and M. Y'all are fantastic. And they just reached their 5-year.
That is amazing.
So I want to say at their 2-year, they decided to do something pretty big. And I think Christine opened a bottle of champagne, but whatever it was, they did. Oh, they used those poppers that had confetti everywhere.
Not in your house.
And I'm pretty sure that Christine said that when she moved out of that house, like there was still stuff everywhere. So
we'll do it in your backyard.
Yeah, we could possibly maybe do that. But we just thank you guys so much. We have
Very
loyal
fun.
Patreons. We appreciate our Patreons so much.
Yes.
We have.
I know a very handsome Patreon.
Yes, you do. This is not the one I'm talking about,
With
though.
pretty legs.
He's got nice calves. Those calves, though. He struts them on a beach, let me tell you.
And in front of Gaston at the fountain in Disneyland.
We're talking about Leah's husband. Yes, he is one of our faithful Patreons. We have another Patreon, though.
Yes, we do.
That has now blessed us.
Yes, he has.
With space on his car.
So exciting.
So we have a wonderful, this is the same listener that made me cry at Christmas.
Yes.
I don't cry.
She does not
I'm
cry.
non-emotional.
No.
I have no emotion. I'm dead
I
inside.
accidentally hugged her today and had to apologize.
Y'all have no clue how true this is. And this is the same Patreon. He's fantastic and amazing. He's all the way out in Iowa.
Oh.
Of all places. Iowa. It's insane. So, yes, we have made it to a car. I put it on our Instagram. It has made it so far through the snow.
And what was the sticker it was above? Because it was hilarious.
Oh, yeah, cult of weirdos, which is so true.
Yes.
It's so true. So yeah, y'all can go to our Instagram and y'all can see that photo, but our podcast cover sticker has graced that. And if you would like to do that as well, you are more than welcome to. All you have to do is become a Patreon, and there are different tiers that you can join. This specific Patreon is a founding father, and it's crazy. It's made it through negative 20-degree weather so far and snow. So we know that I always put, like, if you've gotten a note from me about our stickers, I always put that it's allegedly waterproof. So now we do know that it is, because it's made it through snow for sure. So guys, go leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts with a comment. Send it to me. I will also send you a super cool sticker. You don't have to put it on your car. You could put it on your forehead and walk around all day. That's cool too.
I don't suggest that.
It's a conversation starter.
It is, but you could also put it on your
water bottle, laptop. I have one on my laptop. I have one on my phone. You guys can do that too. And you can also, yes, luggage. Yes. You can, like I said, go to Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review, leave a comment, send it to me. I will send you a sticker as well. Or you can go to our Patreon at patreon.com/OneNationUnderCrime. Super hard to remember, I know. But you can go there and there are different tiers, and there are certain tiers where you get a sticker. So if you join that tier, you will also be the owner of that. And with that,
she's looking at me and I don't know why.
we got an episode to dig into this week.
Oh, that's why.
That's why we're here.
Business.
That is why we're here.
Oh, yeah.
Last week's episode was quite funny. The ending of it, guys, and I'm going to go ahead and let you know. I'm going to go ahead and let you know right now. Next week, the bipedal tailless beaver makes a return. I'm not even kidding you.
This
It truly ties into the story for the week. We have another wild story next week, but that does come into play. So I know y'all are looking forward to that as much as we are. But
look, that got all over me.
It's so funny. Anyways, so our sources for this week, we have Britannica, of course, Encyclopedia Britannica. You remember when they used to go around and sell encyclopedias door to door, encyclopedias?
I don't remember
door.
that, but I do remember growing up, we did have the World Book encyclopedias.
Oh, yeah. My granny did, too. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. Anyway, she had the whole,
the whole set.
Dang, those things were expensive, too, back then.
Yes, I remember. Do a book report or do any kind of report, go get the encyclopedia out and look it up. Cross-reference. Yes. I grew up without Google.
And then our other source for this week is the First Amendment Encyclopedia.
Ooh.
So our events, we are in 1837 this week. Our events, let's get to those. We have January 26th, Michigan. Funny enough, on the 26th, Michigan was admitted as the 26th state. I wonder if they did that on purpose.
Interesting.
I don't know if they did, but I
would love it if they meant to do that.
I would too.
That would make me happy.
Because you know how I tell, so my daughter, guys, y'all know my daughter's young. And so this does have a meaning. So you know when my birthday is. So the best way that I could tell my daughter, because my daughter is like, I don't know how to remember, my daughter's 7. And she said, I don't know how to remember your birthday. Because her dad's birthday is really easy. It's 8/8. So it's very simple to remember. Mm-hmm. So she said, Mommy, I don't know how to remember your birthday. And I said, well, it's 626. Mm-hmm. And she goes, oh. And I go, like experiment 626. Lilo and Stitch, because Stitch is experiment 626.
I didn't realize that.
And so she goes, oh, Mommy, you're Stitch. I was like, girl, that would make a lot more sense, honestly.
My first car was a 626.
So there you go. So that's how, So she goes, experiment 626.
I love it.
Yes.
I love your precious girl.
She's hilarious, guys.
She is you made over.
Guys, if you even knew. Anyways.
We have stories.
Oh, gosh. On February 8th, Richard Johnson became the only vice president chosen by the United States Senate. February 11th, the American...
Wait, how is that?
Because they couldn't choose at that point. So keep in mind, this is Andrew Jackson's gone. They did elect a new president. I think there was a runoff. They couldn't figure out who was going to be the vice president. Anyways, so this is the last vice president that was fully elected by the Senate. And only. So, very interesting.
I was curious.
February 11th, the American Psychological Society was organized in Boston. I just need to go to Boston. That's where I need to live.
I have never been there, and I would really like to.
If
I could run into a new kid on the block or two, that would be just the icing on the cake.
I just like it for the adjacentness to Salem. So... If anybody knows who the Dropkick Murphys are shipping out to Boston, that's what I always think. Anyways, February 13th, a riot in New York due to a combination of poverty and the increase in the cost in flour broke out. Very large riot that occurred in New York. I have no words.
Didn't they have mills that they went and made their own flour?
This was in New York City, so I'm not really sure
I guess any
as far as that goes.
Yeah.
That I'm not 100% on. For those of you who don't know, we are now 13 minutes into this episode. Lee and I have already taken one break, and we stopped recording 30 minutes ago.
We've had all kinds of conversations.
Guys, this is a night.
On. Mercy.
We have not made it far. All right, we're gonna push through. So February 25th, we just dealt, if you do not recall, which I'm sure you don't, Leah, we just dealt with the increase in the cost of flour.
Yes, because I asked about if
it's in the city.
Because I didn't think about them being in the city because I thought people did their own, but yes, city folk, country folk.
Next week we deal with a state implementing prohibition. So that's the time that we're coming in. Anyways, it's dark time for the U.S. February 25th, Thomas Davenport obtained the first U.S. patent on an electric motor. Probably a good thing.
Probably.
We use them a little bit. March 1st, Abraham Lincoln was admitted to the bar and he began practicing law.
I know a little bit about him.
Maybe so.
A little bit. Heard of him before.
March 3rd, we have two events on this day.
Okay.
Congress increased the U.S. Supreme Court membership from 7 to 9. And currently, Andrew Jackson was still president. Mm-hmm. Inauguration at this time had not happened because at this time the inauguration was in March. It hadn't been pushed back. So,
can I tell you something?
What?
I saw the Supreme Court building.
I know.
This past week.
Isn't it fun?
It was so exciting.
I love DC. Even still. So, President Andrew Jackson and Congress recognized the Republic of Texas. Tejas, as some would say.
Tejas.
A very small group would say. Yes. But March 4th, we have 3 events. I know. It's a big year, guys. Martin Van Buren was inaugurated as the 8th president of the United States. The Weekly Advocate changed its... Dear Jesus.
Oh, my.
Past me. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, there are times where I refer to future me and past me. Like, I did not want to physically have children because I was always kind of like afraid of it. But then when
Why do you think I don't have kids? I'm 42.
It's scary.
Dodge that bullet.
Anyways, you're not out of it yet. Anyways, I was always terrified of actually having children. So when I found out that I was going to have my daughter, that was future Kayla's problem, not present Kayla's problem. Okay. Well, past Kayla is real funny. Present Kayla is too. But I put the Weekly Advocate changed its name to, in parentheses, I put yikes, the Colored American.
Oh.
Truly yikes. Like,
oh.
Ooh, that,
wow. Wow.
Yeah. There's some things like,
wow.
That's all that I can say about that. And then Chicago was granted a city charter by Illinois. It was already an area, but it was officially granted a city. March 24th, Canada, yay Canada, gave Black citizens the right to vote.
Yay.
Can you, like, this was
them.
This was very early. This was
This is very progressive.
1837. So I did do the research for those who were wondering. And the Voting Rights Act of 1965 is what officially made it to where you cannot be prejudiced against who is actually voting. You cannot turn someone away for voting. And that was kind of like the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Oddly enough, sorry, Mom, same year my mother was born. I thought it was very weird. But
she may not have wanted you to share that.
Probably not. It's fine. The 15th Amendment happened in 1870. And that was what extended the right to vote, but you could be turned away from voting. So the Voting Rights Act of 1965 made it to where you cannot be turned away. So before this, you could try to vote, but your hair might not look good that day. And they could go, nah, fam, I don't like your hair or your skin color, go home. Or you have feminine parts that I don't appreciate, go home. So, anyways, so it's very interesting that in this year, Canada, and again, guys, I know that this is Canada, but there are some things that I find that are just too interesting to not put in.
It is pretty interesting.
So Canada gave Black citizens the right to vote. Very interesting.
Huzzah.
Don't you know? I have good accents, apparently. I did an accent the other night. My boyfriend goes, "Oh, you're actually pretty good at that." And I was like, "Oh.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Cool."
Who knew?
Everybody in the U.S. should know this name.
Okay, I'm ready.
Leah will, but wait till I'm done. May 6th, U.S. blacksmith John Deere.
I do know that name.
Created the first steel plow in Grand Detour, Illinois. And in the same year, he began his agricultural manufacturing business. May 10th, the New York City Bank failed and unemployment reached record levels.
Ruh-roh.
They hadn't met 2020 yet, apparently. May 31st, the Astor Hotel opened in New York City. It later became the Waldorf Astoria.
I've been there.
Super famous hotel. June 5th, Houston, Texas was granted a city charter. June 11th, the Broad Street riot occurred in Boston, Massachusetts, which was fueled by ethnic tensions between the Irish and Yankees. June 17th, Charles Goodyear obtained the first rubber patent.
I was going to ask if it had to do with tires or rubber or something.
July 27th, one of the U.S. mints opened in Charlotte, North Carolina. July 31st, the groundbreaking ceremony took place for St. Charles College in Louisiana, which was the first Jesuit college established in the South. And Jesuits are part of the Catholic Church, for those who don't know. August 28th, I was interested in this one. Pharmacists, keep that in mind, John Lee and William Perrins manufactured Worcestershire sauce.
I was going to say, wait
Lee
a minute.
and Perrins.
Yeah.
It is Worcestershire, for those who don't know. I've heard some people mispronounce it. It's Worcestershire.
Sure.
Some people say Worcestershire. Anyways.
It's very weird.
I saw a TikTok where multiple people were trying to say that word, and it's Worcestershire.
Worcestershire.
Because Worcester is a city. And so it's Worcestershire, like Worcestershire. It's like some people say Worcestershire or Worcestershire. But anyways, so they were pharmacists, which I found
that is interesting. They were pharmacists.
August,
when you said the names, I went,
I know. I saw the last names and I was like, oh.
Did you see me look over at you?
Well, hello.
Wait a minute.
August 31st, Ralph Waldo Emerson gave his famous The American Scholar speech to Phi Beta Kappa Society at Harvard College, and it declared American literary independence from Europe.
Ooh.
September 18th, another company that everyone knows well, Charles Lewis, Tiffany, and John B. Young co-founded a stationery and fancy goods emporium in New York City, and it later was renamed in 1853 as Tiffany and Company. October 9th. Again, we have two events. What is with this year? I don't understand.
It's a crazy year, man.
The steamboat named Home sank off Ocracoke. I did look up to say how you said that. It is how it is spelled.
That is quite the interesting place.
Ocracoke, New York. It killed 100 people.
Oh, that's sad.
Very sad. And a meeting at the U.S. Naval Academy established the U.S. Naval Institute. October 31st, Halloween. The collision of riverboats Monmouth and Tremont on the Mississippi River occurred. 300 people died.
Ooh.
I bet that's a haunted part of that river.
Stop
Anyways,
it. I wonder
how the squirrels felt. I wonder, however, this is what I wonder in this lifetime. Were the 300 people who died, did their souls match up with a squirrel who had also passed?
Stop it.
Look. That means you have a friend in the afterlife.
Kayla.
As a squirrel.
Stop it.
Look, there's one in my attic right now that is about to meet its afterlife if it does not stop scurrying. So,
maybe it's a raccoon.
Oh gosh, it's not that big. I do know that it's not that big.
Maybe it's a baby raccoon
because I've heard it crash around. I honestly, anyways, it's if anybody wants to come to my house and come into my attic and try to find this thing or find its now corpse, please let me know. I am in Alabama. That is all you need to know. I will not triangulate my location any further. I do have 2 cats, and my boyfriend keeps saying, throw one of the cats up there. Make them useful.
Yeah, right.
Well, okay. All right. He goes, you have 3 animals, because I have Fletcher, who's a terrier mix. He goes, you have 3 animals that are
be any good at that.
Exactly.
I mean, I love Fletcher to death, but
God,
no,
that dog is so sweet. He goes, you have 3 animals in this household that are literally bred to get varmints, and you do not use any one of them to their capacity. I was like, no.
Hey, I'll bring Bernie. I mean, she could totally take care of it for you.
Knox could, but he's gained a few lbs since the last time he caught something. I don't know. It may be good for him. So
Bernie could totally take it out for you.
Bernie probably could. November 8th, Mary Lyon, I believe it's Lyon. So I'm going with Lyon. Yeah. She founded Mount Holyoke Female Seminary, which later became Mount Holyoke College.
Nice.
December 29th, the steam-powered threshing machine was patented in Winthrop, Maine. And an undated event for this year. Undated. John Greenleaf Whittier, his first poetry book, Poems Written During the Progress of the Abolition Question in the United States, super short title, was published by Boston abolitionists.
Yeah, I wish he'd have made it like at least take up a little piece of the book at least.
Takes the whole cover. Births in 1837. We have January 19th, William. There's a reason that I'm laughing about this. Because of mine and Leah's line of work.
Oh, dear.
There is a person in this line of work that has part of this name, and it cracks me up every time I see it. January 19th, William Williams King was born. We do have someone in our line of work whose name is William Williams.
Nice.
Very interesting. But William Williams. Could you not come up with anything?
Let's be a little original, friends.
I hope he goes by something other than William. But anyways, he was an American physician and the first brain surgeon in the United States. During his lifetime, this is what I found fascinating.
Did he give lobotomies?
Maybe. I don't know. Didn't say. But he was born in 1837. During his lifetime, he would work on 6 U.S. presidents.
Ooh,
which is a lot when you think about it.
Yeah.
He was a Capricorn. March 7th, we have Henry Draper. He was a physician and astronomer known as the pioneer of astrophotography.
Interesting.
March 18th, Grover Cleveland was born. He is the 22nd and interestingly 24th, skipped a year, president of the United States.
Skipped a term.
You know what I mean. He was also a Pisces.
I think he is also the president that had a pet alligator, if I'm not mistaken.
I want to think that he is. I did not look into him enough because we will eventually cover him. Yes. So I didn't want to look. There's some things that I don't want to look into too much because I kind of want to stay in the mentality of the year we're in now.
There are tidbits in my brain.
Yes.
Kind of
I want to say that he is one of them.
Add to the podcast.
Wasn't there another one that had a raccoon or something?
There were lots of interesting pets.
Lots of interesting.
I had a book when I taught about different pets in the White House.
I saw something the other day that was talking about, now there's a cat in the White House, and someone put, we no longer have a president. If anyone owns a cat, they know the cat
the one that's
now runs the United States. And I went, honestly, wouldn't be mad if a cat ran the United States. There's a city that a dog became mayor. Anyways.
I've seen that.
April 17th, John Pierpont Morgan, a.k.a. J.P. Morgan, was born. He is an American financier and investment banker who dominated corporate finance on Wall Street through the Gilded Age. He created a bank later known as J.P. Morgan and Company. Today, you might know it as J.P. Chase Morgan. And he spearheaded the formation of several corporations, such as U.S. Steel, International Harvester, and General. I know. I thought of that when I heard it. And General Electric, aka GE. He held controlling interests in Aetna, the insurance company, Western Union.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
The Pullman Car Company.
We know about that.
And 21 railroad companies.
Wow.
He was an Aries. May 27th, James Butler, a.k.a. Wild Bill Hitchcock.
Oh, I know
was born.
Him.
He was the folk hero of the American Old West, known for his role in many gunfights. He was a Gemini. May 28th, Antonio Tony Pastor was an American impresario, variety performer, and theater owner who became one of the founding forces behind American vaudeville entertainment.
So fun.
For those of you who don't know what vaudeville entertainment is, it is a comedy and variety show. Yes. So it's kind of like late night TV is now.
Yes. That's how Julie Andrews got her start, but not in America.
True. And Tony Pastor was a Gemini. We will actually talk about him probably in a USBS episode because I did put him aside to talk about later on. He's very interesting. He also crosses over with P.T. Barnum at some point. So I found that very interesting. June 22nd, Paul Morphy. He was the American chess player who is considered to have been the greatest chess master and considered by many as the official world chess champion of all time.
Nice.
He's a Cancer. June 22nd also, Touch the Clouds was born. He is the chief of the Mini-Conjuau Teton Lakota tribe, which is part of the Sioux Nation.
He is a very long name.
He is known for his skill in battle, physical strength, diplomacy. He is also a Cancer, but he is most known for being 7, you heard me correctly, 7 feet tall.
Whoa.
That's a big dude.
That's a mountain of a man.
I mean, that's
literally.
That's a big bear. October 29th, Harriet Powers was born. She's a folk artist and quilt maker born into slavery in rural Georgia. She used traditional applique techniques to record local legends, Bible stories, and astronomical events. Her quilts are considered among the finest examples of 19th century Southern quilting. She was a Scorpio.
Love an old quilt.
November 30th, Louis Edson Waterman. He's an American inventor. He held multiple, and once I say this, you'll know exactly who he is, multiple fountain pen patents, and he is a founder of the Waterman Pen Company. So like water pens that you know, that's him. And he's a Sagittarius. And then our deaths in 1737.
Always got to bring us down with telling me who died. I mean,
I literally put dash this case. That's it. This case is the death for this year.
Oh.
So that cuts that section short.
Boom.
November 7th of 1837, Elijah Parish Lovejoy was fatally shot during an attack by a pro-slavery mob who was trying to destroy a warehouse that held Lovejoy's printing press and abolitionists' material. Our story this week takes place in Alton, Illinois. We will kind of travel around a little bit, but Alton is where we end up. It is located on the Mississippi River in Madison County, Illinois. It is a part of the Metro East region of the Greater St. Louis metropolitan area. Some people say St. Louis. Some people say St. Louis. Alton, Illinois is most known for limestone bluffs. Alabaster, near where we live, is also known for limestone. And it is known for those along the river of the area. Fun fact, it was the site of the last presidential debate between Abraham Lincoln and Stephen Douglas in 1858. Many of the houses in Alton, I looked it up. They're gorgeous. They're built in the Victorian Queen Anne style, which is that very almost like gingerbread cookie kind of looking.
Beautiful filigree on the porch and everything. Oh,
gorgeous.
Love it.
So that's what Alton, Illinois is kind of known for. It was a commercial center for large agricultural areas. Alton was developed as a river town in 1818 by Rufus Easton, who named the town after his son, Alton. He ran a passenger ferry service across the Missouri and Mississippi shores, and Alton is located right at the confluence of three navigable rivers, which are the Illinois River, the Mississippi River, and Missouri. Then it became a river trading company, and it is now known as a town with a, quote, industrial character. The city grew right on the waterfront where grain silos and railroad tracks were constructed to store and ship the area's grains and produce. The city has several brick commercial buildings, and it has an unusually high number of streets still paved in brick, much like our college.
Oh, man, you are
beautiful.
Not a real attendee of college until you've tripped over a cobblestone.
One of those tree roots pops them up. Anyways, the lower levels of Alton are subject to floods, many of which have inundated the historic downtown area of the town. The dates of different flood levels are marked on the large grain silos, part of the Ardent Mills area near the Agrasy Casino at the waterfront. The flood of 1993, coincidentally also the blizzard of 1993 for Alabama, is considered the worst of the last century for this area. The first penitentiary in Illinois was built in Alton. During the American Civil War, Union forces used the penitentiary to hold prisoners of war, and about 12,000 Confederate soldiers were held there. During the smallpox epidemic of 1863 and 1864, an estimated 2,200 men died.
Just a couple.
That place is haunted. A Confederate mass grave on the north side of Alton holds many of the dead from the epidemic, and a memorial marks the site of their burial. Often when Confederate prisoners escaped, they tried to cross the Mississippi River back to the slave state of Missouri, because keep in mind, this will come into play in a bit. Illinois at this time was a free state. Missouri was a slave state. So Confederate soldiers,
surprising to me.
I know, Confederate soldiers would flee from Illinois, a free state, back to Missouri, a slave state.
Surprises me that Missouri was a slave state, though.
We'll get to it, I think. Don't hold me to that. Robert Pershing Wadlow. He is listed in the Guinness Book of World Records as the world's tallest man.
Cool.
He is marked at 8 feet.
Woof.
11.1 inches.
Almost 9 feet
tall.
Oh, my stars.
For those of our international listeners, that is 2.72 meters. He is buried in Oakwood Cemetery in the area known as Upper Alton.
That's almost 2 of me.
I know. The earth over his grave was intentionally raised so visitors can compare its length to the other graves in the area.
Oh, that's a little bit tacky.
And last but not least, certainly Leah will not care about this part, but I do. The McPike Mansion and Mineral Springs Hotel were featured on the Travel Channel series Ghost Adventures with the one and only Zach Bagans. And on to our story for the week. Elijah Parish Lovejoy, one of the most influential people, honestly, during this time. You'll find out why, and it's an interesting story. He was born on November 9th of 1802 in Albion, Maine. His parents were Elizabeth Pate and Daniel Lovejoy. He was the first of 9 children, and I put just no. 9.
Now, did all of these 9 survive, or are these just the 9 that did survive?
Oh, no.
And were there more?
No. 9. Not the German 9 of no.
No. I'm saying
9 children.
Did these 9?
Oh no, they all survived.
But
these are survived. They all have names.
Yes, but were there more that didn't? Is what I'm saying.
Possibly. And again, just ... No. His father was a preacher and a farmer, while his mother was described as a homemaker and devout Christian.
What else does she have time to do?
I mean, at this point, Elijah was actually named after Elijah Parish Lovejoy, as you know, who was a mentor of his father. And I just put the OG Elijah Parish, was a minister and a politician. The father of the family, Daniel, did not have a formal education, and he made sure that his sons, Elijah, Daniel, Joseph, Cammet, Cammett,
interesting name,
Owen, also interesting for this time, and John all obtained schooling themselves. As for his 3 daughters, I was apparently a little salty when I wrote this. My bet is that they were not given the same luxury. However, Elijah was taught how to read the Bible and several other religious texts at a young age. He finished his early education in public schools near his home, and then he went on to the Academy at Monmouth, which was a private school for secondary education. He became very proficient in Latin and found himself to be very talented in Leah's favorite subject, mathematics. This led him to enroll at Waterville College as a second-year student for his first year in 1823. Based on faculty recommendations from 1824 to 1826, he served as the headmaster. You heard this correctly, headmaster of Colby's Associated High School, which was the Latin school in the area, later called Coburn Classical Institute. Well, he was in college serving as the headmaster of a high school.
Good for him.
Dear gracious, no.
Hey, when my daddy was in high school, he was driving a school bus.
That is terrifying. Anyways,
he was very responsible and handsome.
I would have also described myself as responsible in high school, but I can't say that I was.
He was.
Maybe. He received financial support from Minister Benjamin Tappan to continue his studies at Waterville College. Tappan later served as a U.S. District Judge and a U.S. Senator for Ohio.
Ooh.
In September of 1826, Elijah graduated cum laude from the university, and he was also named as valedictorian.
Good for him.
During the winter and spring, he taught at China Academy. That is the name of it, China Academy.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
Wonder.
Could not find anything really on it, but whatever. Soon he became dissatisfied with daily teachings, and Elijah considered moving to the southern United States, which at this point was technically the western United States. This was not truly the southern. This was kind of the western area of the United States. But at this time it was considered southern, so I just wanted to make sure that was clear. This was not, he did not move to the south. He kind of moved west a little bit. He kind of moved southwest.
Okay.
In kind of this time. By May 1827, he had moved to Boston to earn money for his journey. He decided to settle in the free state of Illinois. But he was unsuccessful at finding work, and he started to Illinois by foot. He stopped in New York City in mid-June, and he tried to find work. He eventually landed a position with the Saturday Evening Gazette as a newspaper subscription peddler. For nearly 5 weeks, he worked to sell subscriptions. Struggling with his finances, he wrote to Jeremy Chaplin, the president of Waterville College, and he explained his situation. Chaplin actually sent him money to help him out. This gave Elijah the ability to continue on his journey west. Unfortunately, it wasn't long into the trip when he got sick. Even though his intent was to end up in Illinois, which was a free state, he arrived in St. Louis, Missouri in late 1827. Keep in mind that Missouri, as I said before, was a slave state at this point. Elijah went back to what he knew and operated a private school with a friend. They modeled their school after the academies that Elijah had attended before. And as before, Elijah's interest in teaching faded quickly, and at this time, it wasn't due to boredom. Local editors of a newspaper started publishing Elijah's poems. Then in 1829, he became co-editor with T.J. Miller of the St. Louis Times, where he promoted the candidacy of U.S. Senator Henry Clay for his presidency. Editing the newspaper introduced him to more people who had similar mindsets of himself. Some of them were members of the American Colonization Society, also known as the ACS. The ACS had mixed reviews, if we're being honest. The main push for them at this point was to send freed slaves to Africa and considered it a type of reparation, I put reparation in quotes, of sorts. But Frederick Douglass, as we have talked about before, he is a slave that escaped from slavery. He's very famous. Frederick Douglass had been very outspoken in his opposition to the ACS entirely. Douglass said that most Black people in the United States were native born and had been for generations, which of course made them feel like their home was the U.S., and sending them back to Africa would not be in their best interest. Can't say that I disagree.
I mean, duh.
Elijah also started to bump elbows with other new acquaintances, such as prominent St. Louis attorneys and slaveholders, such as Edward Bates, who later became a U.S. Attorney General under President Abraham Lincoln, Hamilton R. Gamble, who became a Chief Justice of the Missouri Supreme Court, and his brother Archibald Gamble. And during his time at the paper, it is noted that he hired slaves, quote, I put this in quotes for a reason, quote, leased out by owners, because apparently you can lease people too. But they were leased out to help him at the paper. One of them was William Wells Brown, who later said about Lovejoy, quote, he was a very good man and decidedly the best master that I ever had. I am chiefly indebted to him and to my employment in the printing office. For what little learning I obtained was while in slavery and working for him. It was around this time that Elijah started to struggle with religion, and he wrote to his parents on a few occasions lamenting about his rebellion and sinfulness. That is, until Elijah found the revivalist movement, which was led by abolitionist David Nelson. He went on to sell his interest in the paper and went back to study at Princeton Theological Seminary. Once he graduated, he went to Philadelphia, where he became an ordained minister of the Presbyterian Church. He had done all of these things by the time he was 31.
Wow.
I feel very
inadequate.
Underachieved. Anyways.
I'm 42, man. I mean, I'm just saying.
It wasn't long until St. Louis came calling back to him, and a group of friends offered to finance a Presbyterian-affiliated religious newspaper if Elijah agreed to come back and be the editor. Just 7 months after becoming a minister, he left and went back to publish the first issue of the St. Louis Observer. This is when he started writing editorials which criticized slavery. It wasn't just slavery that he went after either. He wrote a series of articles criticizing the Catholic Church, which we know is never good. Between attacking those two topics, Elijah essentially put a target on his back. The Missouri Republican newspaper began publishing articles supporting the gradual emancipation of slaves, which Elijah also continued to encourage. The more articles that were published, the more pushback he was receiving from the community. Pro-slavery proponents condemned anti-slavery coverage in newspapers, stating that it was against, quote, the vital interests of slaveholding states. Elijah was threatened to be tarred and feathered if he continued to publish anti-slavery content. Just think about being tarred and feathered for a moment.
Not cool.
Not fun. Not a time that I would sign up for, to be honest.
Not good for the skin.
I think it would be a little bit of, what do they call it? Comedenic, where it like kind of clogs your pores a little bit. I don't think it'd be good for it.
Not good for the complexion.
Not for the pores. The feathers could be itchy. Not
problematic. Problematic.
In a lot of ways. For timeline's sake, we have to break it this time to talk about Elijah's personal life, because he had actually gotten married.
Oh.
Right when he came back to be a part of the paper, he was also traveling around the state as an evangelist preacher. This is when he met Celia Ann French in St. Charles, Missouri. They married on March 4th of 1835, and Elijah described his wife as intelligent, refined, and of agreeable manners.
Oh, that's very kind.
I don't know how I feel about agreeable manners being described as mine.
That means she was a lady. He's describing her as a lady.
I don't know if anybody described me as that. Anyways,
well, I wouldn't.
Not a lie. They had 2 sons together. One was named Edward, and the other was born after Elijah's murder.
Oh,
I know.
Sad.
I know.
Did she name him Elijah?
I didn't see a record of a name.
Oh.
And that's all that I could really find on his wife and kids, too.
That is so sad.
I know.
That's very sad.
I've seen stories and I've seen things where that have happened before, and that was, that one was a knife to the heart. By October 1835, there were rumors of mob action against the Observer. A group of prominent citizens, including many of Elijah's friends, wrote a letter pleading to him to stop the discussion of slavery in newspapers. Elijah was out of town at the time, and the publishers declared that no further articles on slavery would be published during his absence. They said that when he returned, he would follow a more rigorous editorial policy. Elijah responded, by ignoring everything the publishers said.
Wah, wah.
But as the tensions over slavery escalated in St. Louis, Elijah would not back down from his convictions. He sensed that he could soon become a martyr for the cause as well. He was asked to resign as the editor of the Observer, to which he actually agreed. After the newspaper's owners released the Observer property to a mortgage company, new owners purchased the Observer and asked Elijah to come back. In April of 1863, Francis Mcintosh, a freed slave and boatman, was arrested by two policemen. On his way to jail, Mcintosh grabbed a knife and stabbed both men. One was killed and the other was seriously injured. Bit of a trigger warning here. Mcintosh attempted to escape, but was caught by a mob who tied him up and burned him to death. One of the worst ways to go, if I got to be honest. Some of the mob participants were brought before a grand jury to face charges. The presiding judge coincidentally named Judge Lawless. You heard that correctly. He refused to convict anyone. He said that the crime was a spontaneous mob action without any specific people to prosecute. The judge made remarks suggesting that abolitionists, including Elijah and the Observer, had incited Mcintosh into stabbing the policeman. Therefore, anyone who took any actions against Mcintosh were completely all right.
Wait a minute. Wait.
Keep in mind, his name was Judge Lawless.
So the article is saying, hey, slavery is wrong. We shouldn't have slaves. That made this one individual
who was a freed slave,
who was arrested for whatever reason that we don't know, pull a knife on these two officers. These articles made him do that. And so
because of course, keep in mind, his slave owners would have taught him how to read. But continue. Because we know that.
Yes. And so because
of that,
he did that, that was the fault of the people who
the newspaper and Elijah, not the people who attacked him.
No, it was his fault. And because he did that, he deserved to be burned. And it wasn't really the people's fault who wanted to, teach him and quote his kind a lesson.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I understood.
I'm glad you're catching on.
Okay, okay. I wanted to make sure I understood exactly what was going on.
When I typed it out, I had to read it a few times to make sure I was reading it correctly as well.
Okay. Making sure I was following the plan and what was going on here. Okay, got it.
Wow. Yeah.
I hope my sarcasm translated there. Okay.
This, of course, incited violence, and a mob broke into the Observer office and vandalized it. Future Mayor Brian Mullenphy, was one of the only ones that tried to intervene in the vandalism, and that included the police and city officials who stood by and watched it all happen.
Stood by and watched.
Elijah packed what was left of the office up and decided to move the Observer headquarters across the Mississippi River to Alton, Illinois. The printing press was sitting on the riverbank. Who thought this was a good idea? I don't know. It was unguarded overnight, and it shouldn't be a surprise that vandals destroyed it and threw the remnants into the Mississippi River.
I mean, it was on the bank of the river. Hello.
Yeah. Illinois had already become a free state at this time, and Alton was actually much larger than Chicago at this time. Remember Patty Cannon?
I don't like her.
And I mean, I put in parentheses,
And her skull.
Who could forget?
I have nightmares about that nasty skull sitting there for people to see at Halloween.
And how she was a part of the reverse Underground Railroad.
I try to forget about that nasty wench.
Alton happened to also be a center for, quote, slave catchers. That's what they called themselves. And pro-slavery activists from the South. Many refugee slaves crossed the Mississippi River from Missouri, and in Alton, many residents were pro-slavery Southerners who thought their city should not become a haven for escaped slaves. Elijah did become a pastor at the Upper Alton Presbyterian Church, and in 1837, he started the Alton Observer, which was also an abolitionist Presbyterian paper.
Same paper, different name.
Yep. Being in a free state, Elijah's views on slavery became more extreme than they were before, and he called for a convention to discuss forming an Illinois chapter of the American Anti-Slavery Society. I just want to point out that would be AASS. I am really trying to hold that in. Anyway, this society,
we're 12 years old for just a moment here.
This society was established 4 years earlier in 1833 in Philadelphia. Even though he was in a free state, his ideas became too radical for the city, and they started to question whether he should be able to continue printing. The economic downfall from President Jackson's decision to not extend the charter for the Second Bank of the U.S. caused a bit of a disaster for everyone, which also caused everyone to look for answers regarding the cause of the downfall. And in Alton, they looked at Elijah. And of course, his paper was the reason for their hardships.
Sure.
They felt southern states or even the city of St. Louis might not want to do business with their town if they continued to harbor such an outspoken abolitionist. Elijah held the Illinois Anti-Slavery Congress at the Presbyterian Church in Upper Alton on October 26th of 1837. Supporters were surprised to see two pro-slavery advocates in the crowd, John Hogan and Illinois Attorney General Usher F. Linder.
Oh, his name was Usher. Is that right?
Usher, Usher, Usher. Little John. Ew, ew. Anyways. God, yeah, it was such a good song.
I mean, I just want to make sure I understood that correctly.
Love Confessions by Usher. Anyways, the supporters were not happy to have enemies at their convention, but relented as the meeting was open to all parties. On November 2nd, 1837, Elijah responded to threats in a speech, saying, quote, "As long as I am an American citizen, and as long as American blood runs in these veins, I shall hold myself a liberty to speak, to write, and to publish whatever I please, being amenable to the laws of my country for the same." Dang.
Wow. I mean,
that is, whew.
I mean, brass. Brass.
Finally, Elijah received his fourth printing press, and he hid it in a warehouse owned by Winthrop Swaggart Gillum, who was a major grocer in the area.
I like his name.
Swaggart. You gotta love it. Anyways, a mob which mostly had citizens from Missouri in it attacked the warehouse on November 6th of 1837.
It's not nice.
This is when things get real. According to the Alton Observer, the mob fired shots into the warehouse. When Elijah and his men returned fire, they hit several people in the crowd. They killed a man whose name was only known as Bishop. After the attacking party seemed to have withdrawn, Elijah opened the door and was instantly struck by 5 bullets, dying within minutes.
Like a firing squad, man.
Yeah, it was bad. Francis Butter Murdoch. His middle name is Butter.
I mean, is that his middle name or is it like his nickname? Like
it was his middle name for sure.
I mean,
it was his, yeah. He was the district attorney of Alton.
Oh, my.
And he prosecuted charges of riot related to both assailants and defenders of the warehouse in January of 1838 on Wednesday and Friday of the same week. He called the Illinois Attorney General, Usher Linder, to assist him.
Usher.
Murdoch and Linder first prosecuted Gillum, who was the owner of the warehouse, and 11 other defendants of the new press and the building. They were indicted on 2 charges related to the riot at a trial that opened on January 16th of 1838 for, quote, unlawful defense. So defined and charged because it was, quote, violently and tumultuously done. Gillum, the owner of the warehouse, moved to be tried separately. His counsel said that he needed to be able to show his lack of criminal intent. The court agreed on the condition that the other 11 defendants would be tried together. Although the proceedings lasted until 10 p.m. that night, in the case of Gillum, the jury returned after 10 minutes to declare him not guilty. The next morning, the, quote, city entered a null prosequi as to the other 11 defendants, effectively dismissing all of the charges against them. So these are all the people inside the warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
A new jury was called to hear the case against the assailants of the warehouse, the attackers allegedly responsible for destruction of the warehouse, and Elijah's death, were tried beginning the 19th of January, 1838. Concluding it was not possible to assign responsibility among the several suspects and others not indicted. The jury gave a verdict of not guilty. The jury foreman had been identified as a member of the mob, and he was actually wounded in the attack.
Oh, my goodness.
The presiding judge doubled as a witness to the proceedings. These conflicts of interest are believed to have contributed to the non-guilty verdict.
I'm so shocked. Color me shocked.
Elijah Parish Lovejoy was buried in Alton Cemetery in an unmarked grave to try and prevent vandalism.
Oh, that makes me sad.
But later in 1864, his grave was, quote, reclaimed from oblivion by Thomas Dimmock, who was a manager later of the Alton Democrat newspaper. Dimmock had, quote, succeeded in establishing the location of a grave which currently was in a roadway where vehicles were passing over it.
That is very disrespectful.
Mr. Dimmock had the bones disinterred and laid in a new grave where they would be free from trespass. He also arranged for a gravestone and helped found a committee to create a monument to the editor. Dimmock was a principal orator at the dedication of a later monument erected in 1897 to commemorate Elijah. The Chicago Tribune said of the grave marking an association to fund a monument, quote, for many years, Lovejoy's grave was unmarked and in danger of utter oblivion until one who had known him in life, Thomas Dimmock of St. Louis, marked the grave with the simple stone bearing the inscription, Hic jacet Lovejoy, Jean Parse Duplot. Here lies Lovejoy. Now spare his grave. It was largely through the efforts of Mr. Dimmock that 10 years ago, the Lovejoy Monument Association was formed. So today, Elijah is considered a martyr by the abolitionist movement. And in his name, his brother Owen Lovejoy became the leader of the Illinois abolitionist movement.
Aww.
Owen and his other brother, Joseph, wrote a memoir about Elijah, which was published in 1838 by the Anti-Slavery Society in New York, and it was distributed widely among abolitionists in the nation. With the symbolic killing of Elijah contributing to the rising tensions within the country, Elijah is considered the first casualty of the Civil War. And that is the story of Elijah Parish Lovejoy.
Wow.
Crazy.
Wow.
He was murdered. Like, and guys, the reason this is so insane to me is for those who do not know, my degree is in journalism.
Yeah.
I studied journalism.
Yeah.
in depth. And this man, he was murdered for his ideals. I mean, I get that a lot of people are. I get that is the thing in this country. However, I guess it hits home a little bit harder
because he was doing what you want to do, like what you were trained to do.
He did exactly what he was supposed to do in writing what he stood up for. It was a Presbyterian abolitionist paper. Period. Yeah. Like that's what it was. Right. And it's just insane to me, but he's very influential. I do know that, and I understand regardless of where we're listened to, regardless of who listens to us, we have actually, from people who have spoken with Leah, we have had people listen to our podcast that we actually have challenged and changed their beliefs on some things that they thought,
or maybe not even changed their beliefs, just made them
research more into what they did not
think about, or think, oh, I need to look more into this, and like read books about topics that
I didn't know about.
Yeah, like, oh, I want to know more about this.
And with, like I said, I know this can, for some people, be a controversial thing. It honestly shouldn't be, but I get it. This is Black History Month.
It is.
Elijah Parish Lovejoy, while he was a white abolitionist, he is also represented in a lot of museums for Black Americans because of
he fought for them.
And that's not to say he's some wonderful saint, but honestly, in these, you have to have an ally.
Yeah,
you have. It's especially. I'm not saying in the times of today, guys. Like, I get it. Understand. We're trying to be politically correct. We understand we can't make everyone happy, but please understand the intent in what we say.
People have to work together, and there has to be somebody to help other people.
Yes.
You have to have a voice that can help get the word out and get the word across.
And for this man to, one, go from hiring slaves to work for him at a paper.
Leasing. Wait a minute.
Leasing. To then going on to create an abolitionist paper.
Right.
The evolution, and in a short period of time.
Yes.
So he was 31 by the time he became a preacher. So he was before 35 before he died. So think about that in your mind. If he went from the age of 31 to the age of maybe 34, 35 to completely changing his beliefs.
Absolutely.
And then also being willing to die for what he believed.
Yeah, and not meet his unborn child.
Oh, I can't imagine.
I mean,
I can't, which happened to Alexander Hamilton, because remember, that was young Philip. I understand. But I'm just saying there's, it's just, this is one of those stories. And what was funny is the reason that I bring this up is because a lot of the other sources that I found him in were related to Black museums, to websites that were about Black history.
Sure.
So it was very interesting that this story came along in this time of when, you know, slavery was still, there were some states that didn't have it. There were some slaves that did. We talked about the entire Underground Railroad and the despicable reverse Underground Railroad. And
you said that nasty woman's name.
I know. And to think that, like, this man died for people he didn't know, which I get that a lot of people do, but anyways, just thinking about this, there's a whole lot more about Elijah Parish Lovejoy that you can look into. He was very influential in a lot of different ways. There are several schools that are named after him, parks that are named after him. He has monuments in different places. He's a very interesting individual just based off of who he is, how he was raised, kind of how his life evolved. And just an interesting story. And that's what's fun about our podcast, is that we never know who we're going to talk about.
Yeah, you can uncover so many cool stories.
So many things. And that was one of the compliments that I've always heard about our podcast, is that people hear stories on
they're like,
that they've never heard.
Yeah.
Which is always really fun. And so
I'm sorry, the story of the first attempted assassination.
You can't beat that. You can't
goodness
beat it. And coming up, our Patreons will have a little bit more of an inside to that episode.
Well, yeah, I visited family in Maryland. We did have a death in the family on my mother's side, which was very, very sad. Very, very sad. If I had favorites, then I may have lost a favorite uncle. If I had favorites, you're not supposed to have favorites, so I don't. But if I had favorites. But I was able to visit with some of my mom's family. We were up there celebrating his life. And I was talking about the podcast. I was like, oh my gosh, let me tell you this latest one. And I was telling them about it. And they were like, oh my gosh. And I was like, I know.
The stories that come out of it are honestly, which I never intended, because as a lot of you know, I did come up, like, it's not to pat myself on the back or be congratulatory of myself.
Yes, it is.
But I did. Well, I'm just saying, and like, I did come up with the idea of this podcast, but it was just because I came up with an idea. It wasn't an intent of uncovering stories that people didn't know. That was never my thought.
We just needed to fill in each year. Right. And then you were like, oh, well, this one looks really cool. Let me look at this.
And it's just, there's so many things throughout our history that are not known.
And that have been lost.
And to be able to give people a name, like, I mean, some of the people that we've covered, you would have never known about them.
Yeah.
Like, period. Not at all. And like, we actually have been able to put a name to not necessarily a face because of how like our podcast has been created. But think about Dr. James Durham, who was episode 3 for us, like 3.
And we're on 40.
And like, no, there's so many people that I talk to that are like, I never knew who Dr. James Durham was.
I know.
And those are people that get lost to history that should never get lost to history. Yeah. Like, he was one of the first slaves to ever become, no, he did not go to school as a actual studied physician, but he was trained as a doctor. And those are stories that should never be forgotten. And, you know, we cover so many of those. The story of Dominic Daly and James Halligan, who were murdered. I say murdered because they were hung simply because of Irish racism and Irish Catholic racism in the United States. And just so many of the stories that we have covered that are just... the murder of George.
Ugh,
that one was one of the hardest episodes that I had to write. I mean, I have had others, but that was honestly one of the hardest. We've talked about so many issues that are social issues today, like the first.
So many of them relate back to now, though.
now.
I mean, you can still see maybe not the exact same situation, but it still echoes now.
Like the America's first case of murder by counseling, where we discussed the case that happened within the past several years of a murder by counseling case that happened in the same state.
Yeah,
like a lot
it still echoes.
There are just so many cases, and they're actually super funny. There are two podcasts, popular podcasts, which I love them, and I shouted out to them on Twitter, and this will be like the last thing before we wrap up for the night. But two podcasts, both of my favorites. One, Morbid, a true crime podcast. Wildly popular. They covered the Purrington family massacre. So weird to hear someone else cover a case that you also covered. And then two, and that's why we drink, covered Lavinia Fisher.
Yeah.
Who was one of, quote, the first female serial killers, which we debunked all of that. But Lavinia Fisher is one of our most famous episodes that we have out. That's one of the most downloaded ones that we have. So it was so interesting hearing two podcasts that I listen to on a weekly basis cover cases that we've also covered. They also shouted out for our Purrington episode, Murder She Told, which we talked about then. Wonderful podcast name. And please go listen to her. I believe her name's Kristen. Her podcast is very good. Please go listen to it. And they actually mentioned it made me so happy just to see like a podcast community get together, because the Morbid podcast, they did also get information from Murder She Told like I did. And her podcast downloads like blew up.
Oh, that's great.
Overnight. And I was so happy for her, because I mean, truly, she's been in it for a long time, and her episodes are not nearly as long as ours are, obviously at an hour and 34 minutes at this point. But it's a crazy experience hearing someone else cover what you've covered, but also they cover it from a different
It's nice to see different angles. Yeah.
It was very interesting. And they had, they also did talk about the diary of the midwife that was next door, but they didn't go into it as much as we did. So I was like, she was related to Clara Barton. She was related to Clara Barton. She was related to her. This started like
Clara Barton made an appearance on The Gilded Age.
Yeah, it's just.
I'm just saying, you need to watch it.
So insane and just crazy.
I have a story that needs to be told. When I taught, I read this book every year, and I would have it out. It's Henry's Freedom Box. And it is a true story about a guy who mailed himself to freedom. No, I mean, seriously.
No, I've heard of that. Yes, I've heard of that.
If you have not read it, and it is a children's book, and it has won a Caldecott Medal, which is amazing. But it is by Ellen Levine. And it is amazing. Henry's Freedom Box. It is a children's book, but it talks about a young slave boy, and he grows up. When he gets a little bit older, he puts himself in a box, in a crate, and he ships himself north to freedom. And it is a true story, and it is amazing.
It's
another story that needs to be told.
It is,
and for the kids to understand.
It is the resilience of people that amaze me. And like Leah knows a lot about my life, and I've seen and gone through a lot. But even still, the resilience of some people astounds
and the resourcefulness.
Yes,
the resourcefulness and the resiliency, and just. But also, what I think is important for us is to teach empathy. And
100%.
And that's what I tried to do when I taught, was to try to, can you imagine putting yourself in a box. I mean, it was dark in there. It was scary, you know, but he knew that that was his best chance of being free.
And I truly think empathy is one of the best things that you can teach really
anyone,
yourself if you don't have it. But I mean, a lot of people can think about themselves in any situation. But yes, empathy is one of the best things that you can be able to teach anyone. Especially, that's one thing that I try to teach my daughter is when someone when you know something happened several weeks ago, and another kid was, which you know how I feel about this. Another kid was kind of semi-bullying, semi-making fun of another kid that was in her class, and Ellie, my daughter, told me about it, and I specifically asked her, I said, what did you do? She said, Mommy, I didn't know what to do. I didn't do anything. And I, that was when I said, this is the time for the conversation. And I sat down with her and I said, sometimes there are people who cannot stand up for themselves because they don't know how to, or they don't have the courage to.
Right.
And that's okay. They don't have to. It's not their job to always have courage, but it's your job if you see something wrong to try and make it right. And I said, because how would you feel?
Right.
And she goes, Mommy, I would feel really bad if somebody did that. And I said, so don't you want to make sure your friends don't feel that way? Because it was something so stupid, like it was something so ridiculous that I said, you know, and she said something. She told the other, it was a group of girls. We know how that is.
Oh, let me tell you.
And
one of little girls, give me a group of little boys any day.
One of them was being very mean. And I told Ellie, I said, you know, how would you, you know, I told my daughter, I said, how would you feel about that? And she said, I wouldn't like it. And she said, and I told her that she needed to be a lot nicer to this other girl. And she said, but she wouldn't listen to me. So I didn't know what else to do. She just kept being mean. And I said, so you know what you do? You say it again.
Good for her.
Doesn't matter how you do it. Doesn't matter how you go about it. You just say it again. And I said, and eventually they'll realize that what you're saying is true and you mean it. And I was trying to explain to her, you know, there are a lot of people, because I was this child. I was not one that stood up for myself. I did not want to be an inconvenience. I wanted to put myself in a little box and be like just to me. And I would not stand up for myself. And I try to push that, which my child is very outspoken and very independent. And I try to instill that in her of like, hey, you know, you can be the voice for someone else.
Yeah.
Even when they cannot be the voice for themselves.
I'm better at being someone else's voice than being my voice.
Oh, look, you come after somebody I know.
You come after one of my people.
I'm a honey badger. I'm one of those wild a honey badger will take down a bear. And I can tell you, I will not put up with that.
Yeah. Come after one of my people. It's on. Come after me.
I'm like,
after one of my people.
Yeah. I mean, but it's just insane because, yeah, you do need to have empathy for people. You need to feel all of those things. And this episode is coming out on Valentine's Day.
Oh, so you know what? Be kind.
Be kind.
Love each other.
Always.
Killing is bad.
And you will find more of those sentiments on our website where you can find any and all ONUC information you are looking for. It is onenationundercrime.com. You know where to find us at this point. And if you don't, what are you doing with your life? Just search for One Nation Under Crime.
Best podcasts ever.
Literally everywhere.
There we are.
And if you love our podcast as much as we do, and we know you do because you made it this far, go rate our podcast on Apple Podcasts, leave a comment, and tell everyone that you know about our podcast. We do have a Patreon, like
tell
we said.
Tell people you don't know.
Anybody. We do have a Patreon, like we said, and if you would also like to help with the cost of hosting and making the show, you can go find us at patreon.com/onenation_under-crime. We love you guys.
We do. Hey, tell people while you're in line at TJ Maxx. That line always gets really long.
Our Home Goods opens tomorrow. Anyways.
It's already open. I know.
Oh, no. Okay. We got to go. It's closed by now. Dang it. Anyways, it's fine.
We love you guys.
We love you guys. We will see you here same time,
Different crime
next week. And remember, there isn't always liberty and justice for all.
No.
Happy Valentine's Day.
We love you.
We love you guys. Goodbye.
Bye.